So we're going to kick off. So as I said, so I suppose before we start actually, and to make sure, I suppose, that all of your chat functions are working, and to wake you up a little bit before we get started, I suppose Sam and I, or the community really, those of us that we've got on the call this morning, let us know if in the chat function, like, what are you most looking forward to after lockdown? Like, when we are allowed back out into the world, when we've got a little bit of freedom, what are you most looking forward to after lockdown? Let us know in the comments below. Let's see what lovely stuff you're all looking forward to before we kind of start with this morning's session. Seeing my mum.
Oh, me too.
Family, reuniting with boyfriend, going for meals, family and friends.
Oh, Sophie,
oh.
Giving my mum and daughter a huge hug. I'm going to cry before we've even got going. I want to give
the family, walking the dog in the park. Family.
Oh.
A visit to the pub. Is that pub?
Yeah.
Yes, awesome.
As well as seeing my mum.
As well as seeing your mum. Seeing your mum at the pub. That's like a combined one. Love that one. Love that one.
Oh, Arlene, I like yours, going to the zoo with my daughter. That's lovely. Lots of hugs.
Barbecue with family, holidays, yeah. Getting back into the training room is a huge extrovert. I'm really missing face-to-face training, and I'm like a massive introvert, but I'm definitely missing that. Getting the teenager out of my hair. Lovely.
Oh my God, getting married.
Oh, lovely.
Kevin. Congratulations.
Congratulations indeed. Being able to meet up with others, get teenager out of my hair, going to the seaside. Seaside, I'm missing the seaside. I should have been on the hairdressers. Yes, so I think lots of people. I see. I don't have the root problem anymore. It's fine, but it's definitely the growth stage is not looking so good anymore. Being able to say yes to the children to see their friends. Yeah, won't that be amazing? I think lots of us are kind of having to say no, aren't we? But yeah, I think fish and chips. We've found, or my mum has found, I haven't used it, but my mum has found a fish and chip shop that deliver. And they're like absolutely telling everybody that they're, making sure that they're in whatever everything that they need to be applying to make sure that they're safe. They're absolutely doing. But my mum has been having fish and chips delivered on a Friday.
Oh, me too. We have a fish and chip shop. Yeah, we have a fish and chip shop on Deliveroo, and let me tell you, that was a good day when I found that out.
Absolutely, I can agree with you there.
Good. What's going on? Leanne, holiday to Spain. Yeah, I kind of feel you. I was due to be on a yoga retreat. I was due to be going the week before. Actually, we went into lockdown. I was due to be going to India for 2 weeks, then coming back kind of via Dubai and a couple of days there. And obviously India had gone into lockdown before we had. It was like, you're not allowed. So I was like, oh. So then I booked to go to Ibiza, thinking that we wouldn't be locked down for very long, to go and see my sister, and that got cancelled as well. So I'm like, oh. So yeah, I feel the pain with that one. But I suppose what's kind of really apparent as it's coming out, and obviously there is some great stuff kind of coming through. Thank you, Sophie. Yeah, I think there is some common thing, obviously, just stuff that we're obviously missing, stuff that we're enjoying. But I think what's really coming out is the connection with others. And I think I had a conversation with Laura Mazzullo that we actually did live yesterday. Laura's based over in New York, and she and I have just been talking and messaging and tweeting and every other form of virtual communication that you can imagine over the last couple of years, really. But I think one thing that had really kind of come out for us, and again, those of you that know me, was very much about action and the need to be able to connect. And I think actually as HR professionals, kind of like if our role isn't about connecting, really what are we there for? I think we need to, the whole of the connection piece for us, for others. And as obviously the topic that we're going to be talking about today is about, kind of returning to work. But I think so many of us are craving that connection in whatever sense that may be. Like this is great. And obviously being able to see all of you this morning is great, but actually being able to give somebody a hug as they walk into a room, or being able to just actually sit next to each other and feel somebody's energy, or being able to just kind of share a little bit of a look with somebody, or a little bit of a laugh with somebody, or the kind of small chit chat stuff that we can kind of have around the coffee machine, or whilst we're kind of on a break. I think some of that sort of stuff is really the stuff that we are starting to miss. Even for me as an introvert, and I never ever thought, when they first kind of announced that we were going into lockdown, I was like, I have been practicing for this my entire life. This is absolutely amazing. And then a few weeks in, I was like wanting to climb the walls, and I was like Zoom fatigue, like you could not believe, in terms of just like sitting and staring into a video. But there is definitely something different about that connection. And I think as we start to plan for work, and I think Sam will talk, or Sam and I will both talk a little bit about that as we go through this morning. But I think connection and kind of relationships are kind of key as we go through. So some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about with you this morning isn't just applicable. Obviously, today's session, we are particularly focusing on what return to work could look like. And as with everything that we do at Chrysalis, there is no one size fits all approach. So we're not going to give you all of the answers today. I don't think we would be able to give you the answers today, but it's really just about starting to communication going, getting some of your thought processes going. Maybe if you want to share some of what you've already started looking at, if you have started looking at it already. But it is about giving you, I suppose, a bit of a framework to start considering when you are in conversation with your people about the type of things that we want you to look at. But it is applicable for any returning to work after any period of time, literally anything. And it's, I suppose, the 4 pillars that I'm going to share with you shortly are actually a key part of a lot of the coaching and workshops that we design, in making sure that we have these 4 pillars kind of present in everything that we're doing. So whilst the focus today is absolutely on the kind of return after COVID, these can be applied at any point, at any time, in any of the kind of work that you're doing as HR. So we just, I suppose, kind of bear that in mind as we go through. I suppose to get us started, and again, just kind of typing it in the comments for us, if you wouldn't mind, like, who is already planning what the return may look like? Who's already started looking at, thinking about what that return may look like? So a few yeses coming through. So you've already started thinking about it. Yes, quite far ahead. Yeah, roughly. Yeah, okay. And then maybe kind of let us know, staff back over the side. Okay, so kind of a bit long-term planning, driven by parent company. Okay. Work in a theatre, of course, so you'll be looking at what the kind of return may look like from a distance. Okay, furloughed. So again, that's something that we'll cover this morning. Just who's leading the planning? Who's leading that planning? So CEO, HR, okay, business continuity, me and MD, self-employed, SMT, there's a lot of HR coming, isn't there? Me, I am headmaster, exec team, relevant staff. Okay, so I suppose we've got a bit of a mix there, haven't we? I suppose pleased to see it's not all falling on HR's feet, as many of these things do. But I think in lots of those questions, lots and lots of you, I suppose, are going to be busy in the planning and have been busy up until now with if you've had to furlough or if you've had to go through redundancy processes or any of those sorts of things. So I will continue to kind of take my hat off to everybody in HR at the moment. If nobody else is giving you thanks, I am. I think you're all doing an absolutely awesome job. I know some of you are, kind of 16, 18 hours a day still. I know some of you are having awful conversations. I know some of you are struggling. I know some of you are kind of really get stuck into it because actually you love a bit of a kind of crisis management from an HR perspective. So I know, again, we're all kind of dealing with it in different ways. But if nobody else is saying thank you, I am, because I think you're all just bloody brilliant. So there you go. That's from me. That's from me. So I'm not normally kind of much of a stats person. But I just wanted to, I suppose, kind of start this morning. I think Sam's got some then around the kind of mental well-being to start off. But, and you can get this online, actually. I was sent this as part of a business group that I'm part of with the Combined Authority. But it's a TUC report.
I'll show the link.
Yeah, we've got the link. I will make sure that is shared for you. But preparing for the return to work outside the home, and it's some information that's come through from the trade union. Now, some of the stats in here haven't gone out to masses of people, but just kind of in the introduction, really, I think just some stats that are just like, wow, I certainly hadn't realised it was kind of quite as high on any of these. But currently, around 45% of the UK workforce is currently estimated to be working from home, with an estimated 70% of business having furloughed their staff, and a significant proportion obviously otherwise unable to work. When the restrictions are eased, significant numbers of people will need to return to work outside of their household, although it is likely, this is what the TUC is saying, that a significant minority who are in the shielding group, as they've got underlying health conditions, will need to remain in lockdown. So 45% of the UK workforce, and again, I think something that I've been banging the drum about for I don't know how long, really, since this kind of started. I think this is not normal working from home. For any of us that have been working from home before, I'm not normally working from home, like sat in honestly, like my desk, my platform to be holding my laptop today is my ironing board. My laptop is on my ironing board as I sit in the conservatory, because the rest of my household have kind of taken over other rooms in the house so that they can continue to work from home. It's like, Mum, you could go over there. So this is where I am. This is not normal working from home. This is working from home during a global pandemic and trying to maintain working from home during a global pandemic. And, working around family members, working on our own, maybe working around young children, teenagers, elderly parents, people that we're caring for. This is not ordinary working from home. And again, I think as we are planning to get people to return to work, we absolutely need to keep that in the forefront of our mind. This is not just working from home like we normally would do. Totally different. And the TUC report then kind of goes on to say, and this isn't, again, huge numbers, but in mid-April, the TUC spoke to 791 members of the public who were currently working from home. And of those, 41% were worried or slightly worried about returning to work. 23% were neither worried nor unworried. And 34% were either not very or not worried at all. But they did see a gender gap. And what they've reported actually is that the gender gap is actually in this instance quite significant. 33% of men are slightly or very worried, compared to 49% of women. And it then kind of goes on to say that a quarter were concerned about their employer asking them to return to work when they didn't think it was safe to do so. Now, for any of you that have been kind of, I suppose, watching the news or kind of preparing, the government been telling us anything about returning to work, the media definitely don't help in these situations, do they? Everybody needs PPE, we need safe distancing. I know some businesses have started to open already. In our local town, I live in Peterborough, like our local paper yesterday online was flooded with the fact that KFC had opened. And there was like a 2-mile queue for people queuing for a KFC drive-through. It's like, is KFC like really that vital? But we're obviously we're seeing like McDonald's are going to be opening again next week. But again, only certain stores. We've seen some of the online stores that were, had closed completely, have then started to reopen. And again, that's all reliant on people going in. So I'm not a politician. I don't understand necessarily this situation any more than anybody else. But I think certainly what we are seeing is that from an economic perspective, we obviously want to start getting people back to work at some point. From a human perspective, actually, what does that look like? And are we going to be putting people at risk? Do we really want people back at work? Who are we going to allow to come back to work first and foremost? And so again, I think those are some of the considerations that we need to be looking at. So let's then kind of go on to the 4 pillars. So as I said, I'm going to talk you through the 4 pillars to consider, and then Sam's going to talk through the kind of foundations that these pillars are built on. And then really get just any questions. If anything comes up for you kind of as I'm going through these, just kind of let us know. The 4 pillars that I want to talk to you about are, and again, we'll make sure that you've got the recording and all of that for ease. But the 4 pillars that I want to talk you through are self. So kind of self as in me, myself, relationships, work, and world. And these are the 4 pillars that I've been working with for, well, probably 6 years really, since I started Chrysalis. From a self perspective, and again, Sam's going to cover the foundations in a bit more detail once I've gone through this. But from a self perspective, again, the question that we asked at the beginning, actually, what are you all looking forward to after lockdown? A lot of that, again, was about connection, wasn't it? Some people are going to want that connection much more than others. Some people's self-confidence will have dipped considerably. Some people, I've got a very, very good friend of mine who actually I've been speaking to on a weekly basis since all of this hit. He's self-employed. He, in effect, lost all of his clients just overnight with what he was doing. And we've continued to be talking on a regular basis. His wife is still working from home. They're newly married. His wife is still working from home. And he's been keeping himself busy with stuff around the house. And up until this week, really, has been kind of keeping himself motivated about the fact that, you know, he's keeping the house going. He's there to support his wife. He's cooking. He's doing all of the stuff that he can to kind of keep the household going. This week, he's not been able to have a conversation. He's not wanted to move off the sofa. His sense of kind of self-worth and his sense of self-value and his sense of self-perception and his self-confidence is absolutely on the floor. And if you have had to furlough any of your people, or, you know, even if you've got people with, you know, if your people have got people within their households who are going through a similar thing, that is absolutely something that we need to be taking into account. Now, on the other side of that, you know, maybe less serious, if you like, but actually still impacting on the individuals. I've got some friends who have not left the house for like 4 weeks, not even for their kind of 30 minutes of exercise, because, you know, their roots have been showing. Like, they don't want to be out the house with their roots showing. You know, like they don't want to be out the house because actually they've put on loads of weight. Like, they have literally just been eating to get themselves through this. So actually from a physical perspective, they don't feel good. They don't want to be leaving the house because something physical has then impacted their confidence levels to a point that they do not want to be seen by the outside world. And again, I think when we're talking to our people and having the conversations with our people, these are some of the things that we need to consider. I've seen some great you know, some of you are kind of wanting to you know, kind of send goodie bags out to people, like kind of welcome back bags, and, you know, really, you know, have like bunting up and banners and all of that sort of stuff. We may not necessarily all be going back to the workplace at the same time. If any of you saw the Barclays article last week about the fact that the Barclays CEO is wondering why he put 7,000 people in a building every day, actually that's probably unnecessary. You may be having some conversations about whether all of your people need to be going back into the office. Some of your people will be craving going back into the office because that's how they need to work. That's how they get their energy. That's what gets them kind of through the day, those interactions. Some people, like if you told me I had to work from home for the rest of my life, I'm fine. I'm literally fine with that. But some people will need that connection. For some people, this is significantly impacting their confidence. It is impacting their view of themselves. It's impacting the view of their world. It's maybe giving them a change in perspective, a change of outlook, a change in priorities. I know from my perspective, like all I've really been focusing on in the last few weeks is that I just want to simplify. I want to make my life as simple as possible. And that's everything from our house to our cars to how we're doing our shopping. So actually, if my work then is massively complicated, actually, what can I do to simplify some of that? Some of us have just had a huge change in perspective, and who we were at the beginning of this may not be who we are today, and may not be who we are when we go into the workplace. And again, I think the more that we can do to start to understand some of that from our people, the better equipped we will be when it comes to them returning to work. And if you are thinking about mass parties and goodie bags and banners and, I don't know, cakes, I've seen like branded cupcakes and all of that sort of stuff, that's amazing. But if you've had to furlough however many of your staff, or if you have had to make mass redundancies, if you've furloughed and not been able to top up to the 100%, again, what impact is that going to have for your people when you're chucking goodie bags at them, but actually 80% of their salary may not have been enough to pay their bills and pay their mortgage and put food on their table and all of that sort of stuff over the course of the last 4 or 5 weeks. So we need to be, again, considering these things as we kind of look to get that plan back. From a relationship then perspective, relationships can, obviously any relationship, you know, we said in the comments this morning, you know, parents, friends, boyfriends, family. But again, what does that look like from a colleague perspective? What is our relationship now with our business? What's our relationship with the purpose of the business? What is our relationship going to be like with our colleagues? Some people, sadly, due to COVID-19 or not, some people have lost loved ones and relatives as a result of this. I know 5 people, sadly, that have lost parents during this. They've not been able to have funerals in the way they would have wanted to. They've not been able to grieve in the way that they would necessarily have wanted to. That is going to impact them as they go back to work. The team itself and colleagues may have changed when people get back. The team may not look the same because of changes or redundancies or furlough. Sadly, it may not look the same because people have lost colleagues as a result of something that may have happened during this lockdown. So again, what we're thinking from a relationship perspective could be very different. The relationships actually that we have with our friends and family may look very different. You know, some people have not enjoyed or not found any peace being at home with their partners and kids around them. Some people have really struggled. We have seen, sadly, some of the awful statistics that are out there about the fact that, you know, domestic abuse has gone up. Sadly, child abuse has gone up. You know, we're looking at things, you know, domestic violence, but actually, even if you've been in a great position, again, I know a couple of people who are having to live with people at the moment that they had already agreed that they were going to be divorcing, but with lockdown have not been able to go into different houses. Now, I cannot imagine having to have spent 6 or 8 weeks with somebody in a house, you know, if this had happened at the point that I was, you know, divorced my ex-husband, me and him in a house together for 8 weeks would not have been a healthy environment for anybody. Not anybody. What's then the bigger impact of that on our children? How do we then kind of take that out with, you know, with people as we go back to work? So again, when we're looking at a relationship perspective, not everybody will have had like great bonding times with their kids or their partners. Some people have been totally at home on their own. Some people are miles away from anybody that they would, you know, kind of normally interact with. You know, it's really tough, really tough. And again, I think we've got to take that into account. So, and I think Deborah kind of quoted me on it last week in one of her LinkedIn posts, but like, we are all on the same seat. Like, I'm so sick and tired of people saying like, we're all in the same boat. Like, we are not. This is not the same boat for anybody. We may all be on the same sea, but we are absolutely not in the same boat. Like, some of us are sailing through this on like exotic yachts, you know, with waiting staff. And some of us are in like a dinghy trying to make sure that we don't like get another hole in the dinghy to get us to where it is that we need to be on shore, and everything in between. This is not the same for all of us as we are going through this. It is totally different. And again, we've got to be understanding that when we go back into the workplace with all of our people. So that's self and relationships.
I think I would add to that as well, Kelly, that as we know, and most of the people on the call know, if not everybody, everybody's resilience level is different. And I think some people would have been going into lockdown perhaps feeling like they were already at capacity or exceeding capacity and feeling the effects of that, and then layering in all of the complexities that lockdown has brought and all of the things you've just described, you know, will undoubtedly have stretched people beyond their limit. And I think if you were in a really good place potentially when you went into lockdown, even though your situation might be tricky, you might have had a greater resilience to be able to deal with it. If you were already in a difficult position and then had this layered onto you, I think you know, that's undoubtedly going to be harder, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Good point. And then the final two, as we said, kind of work. So work and world. Now, work could be as simple as the work itself. Are your people going to be going back into the workplace and carrying on as normal, whatever we're kind of terming normal as? Has the work changed because actually your customer base has changed? Have you got less customers? Are you going to be working differently? Actually, have you made the decision that you don't need an office space anymore and all of you are going to be working from home? So the work itself may have changed, the way you're delivering work may have changed, but also then the work environment may have changed. But people may be looking at that slightly differently. A friend of mine is saving over 10 hours a week at the moment because she's not doing her commute. Now, when I started commuting to London back in 2011, I didn't think anything of it. My commute was just under 4 hours a day there and back. Didn't think anything of it because it was where I could catch up on a bit more work. It's where I could do some reading. It's where I could do some, kind of listen to some music or do all of the great things that I said. When I stopped commuting to London, I couldn't believe how ridiculous it had been that I had been spending over 20 hours a week commuting to London for my job, like 20 hours a week. What could I do with that time back? So again, some people are already thinking that, like, I do not want to go back to the office because actually, if I haven't got the commute, what's that, Rebecca? Yeah, 4.5 hour commute every day. 4.5 hour commute every day. Like, that's a lot of hours back every week. And again, if we're thinking that, and if our people are thinking that, do we need people to be traveling to come to an office just to sit with people? A lot of the expectations of our people from now on will have changed. Lots of organisations up to this point wouldn't look at flexible working, wouldn't consider home working, and then all of a sudden everybody's working from home and everybody could, we can put a bit of flex into the day. The expectations of our people will have changed. They will absolutely have changed now because they have seen and experienced a different world. Now, again, this is not like the best way, as I said, this isn't normal working from home. So, but actually, if people are surviving and thriving during this at the moment, during probably the worst time to start working from home, if they're thriving during this period, then they can and will thrive when kids are back at school and they haven't got their other halves around them, because they're already showing that it can happen. So the expectations of our people will have changed. So again, when you're looking at work, what has changed? What hasn't? What has worked? What hasn't? What do your people want to see? What do they, what are they looking forward to going back to? What are they looking forward to doing differently? What do they never, ever want to do again? Start again having those conversations with your people, really kind of asking them. And it could be as simple as a kind of stop, start, continue. It could be, I don't know, a SWOT analysis. It could be just a conversation with them, but really make sure that you're understanding that. What could flex work like? What adjustments may they want to make? And how can you kind of drive that through?
Sorry, Kelly, a couple of really relevant comments just coming through. One from Tracy Robson has said, we're not looking at post-COVID at this time, we're looking at living with COVID. And I think that's such a relevant point, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We're all so desperately galloping towards when this is over, but actually it's not over, and it will be about living with it as opposed to living beyond it. So I think that's really relevant. And then Suzanne's talked about her business was due to be moving into offices in October this year, but moved actually back a year now, and the size of the office will be much smaller because they've seen how people can enjoy work.
Absolutely. And again, looking at different tech, what has tech allowed us to change within our roles? There's all of those sorts of things that we can consider. But some very good points there, thank you. And yeah, finally for me, world. Now, the world view may be very different for different people. World may be your immediate world, which is you and your family. World may be slightly wider than that, and it may be your street, it may be your village, it may be your community, it may be your town. It may be the wider world view. And again, I think, whatever it is that we kind of do, but actually, what is social media telling us? What is the news telling us? What are the press telling us? Where are we getting the scaremongering from? Where are we getting the good news stories? How are we kind of getting all of that? Our world view at the moment can be changing on like a day-to-day basis, or sometimes even hourly. You can go on a social media feed and it's like, we're all coming through this together and we're all connected and we're all community, and it's like, oh, that's lovely. And then you just turn on the news and you've got somebody bashing another MP, and it's like, oh, you know, this is still a bit rubbish. So the worldview for people, their worldview may have changed considerably from their, you know, from a political view, from a global view, from a financial view, to a family view, to a relationships view, but understanding exactly what it is that makes the world for your people will help them to better be able to move forward as a result of this. And again, it's not, you know, we're not, as we've already mentioned, this isn't about flicking a switch and everything's going to be back to normal. Our worldview, my worldview, again, from where I was 4 or 5 weeks ago, is totally different to the worldview of where I am now, because of what's been happening, because of the time that I've had to reflect, because of the things that I want to be looking at. And that, again, may be the same for everybody. So have a think about how you can incorporate those 4 pillars with everything that you're doing for your people. But as I said, you know, we're focusing today on kind of what it may look like as we start to return to work, but these are 4 pillars that you can use for everything that you're designing for your people. It could be training, it could be returning after mat leave, it could be returning after, you know, paternity leave, it could be returning after a period of sickness absence. You know, all of those things are likely to have changed something about who you are. You know, some of my friends that have gone back after mat leave or paternity leave, their priorities are in a totally different game now, because actually what's important isn't them killing themselves 16 hours a day doing what they need to do. It's about making sure that they're doing their hours and then getting home to their family. So the 4 pillars, so self, relationship, work, and world. How can you start to feed that in for what you're doing to your people? How can you start to make that relevant as we start to look at the return to work? And how can you then, I suppose, just make sure that whatever the transition, I think we need to be probably talking transition rather than kind of end point, but what is this transition going to look like as we go through the next few weeks, months, maybe even years? You know, none of us know what the wider impact again of this is going to be. But if we focus on these 4: self, relationships, work, and world, hopefully then we can be more connected. We can be touching on the 4 pillars of humanness, if you like, and we can start to create just better places for our people as we go through. So I'm now going to hand over to Sam. Has anybody got any kind of questions or any points that they want to, maybe some clarity on, or just kind of recap before Sam starts to talk about the foundations that we want to be focusing on? No. Deborah's made a point there. Marie Kondo approach. Does it bring you joy? Absolutely. Does it bring you joy? Struggling to find documents. Shally, you've put something about documents there. Do you want to just give us a bit more information, and then we can maybe answer that one for you? Sorry, I can't answer that one away. But if there's nothing at this point, then Sam, do you want to talk us through the foundations?
Yes, yeah, I will. Leanne, you've mentioned there about trust, and trust is actually something I'm going to come to. So I'll pick back up with your comment there. So with the 4 pillars that Kelly's been through, we think that there are then three areas that underpin those pillars. And I'm very visual, so you'll see me do this a lot because that's the easiest way of me sort of working it through in my mind. The 3 foundations of the pillars are well-being, communication, and your employees' purpose, so their own individual purpose, their why. First, I want to talk to you about well-being, which nobody will be surprised about because that is my absolute passion. Kelly has touched on a little bit about the well-being of your people and how this time may have affected them. And I really don't think we can underestimate the impact that this lockdown has had on people, or will continue to have on people, to the earlier point about as we continue to live with COVID. And I think it's such a broad scale, as it always is with mental well-being. If we think about that specifically, you have people at the very extreme end of the scale, and you have people at perhaps the less obvious end of the scale. And I think we could all probably plot ourselves somewhere in that at the moment. I don't know about you, but I've had loads of conversations with people over the last however many weeks we're now in, I've lost track of weeks, but however many weeks we're now in, about feeling like they're struggling to concentrate, feeling like it's difficult to organise your thoughts, feeling like when you give an answer to something, you're questioning yourself, and then you start to worry about whether you've given the right answer or whether you've missed something critical. And I think that's probably often something that we experience, and some of those are perfectly normal feelings, but I think what this situation has done is really put those feelings under the microscope. And I know certainly for me, as time has gone on, and I start week 8 of lockdown on Friday, what are we, Thursday, tomorrow, I have found that particularly hard, and I've actually had to let some work that I had committed to do go, because I just cannot organise my brain in a way that I know that will fulfil that need well. What's really difficult about that is, how do you communicate that? One, are you aware of that? Are you aware that that's happened? Not everyone will be, and it will affect everybody differently. But then how do you say that to somebody? How many employees, managers, HR people do we think are going to feel comfortable to say, oh, actually, I'm really struggling to concentrate at the moment, or actually, I'm really struggling to organise myself at the moment, or I'm really questioning my ability at the moment, because I think that requires an awful lot of trust in your manager, in your employer, to accept that of you and to work with you. I think most people would probably feel like they were putting themselves in probably quite a difficult position, perhaps putting themselves in a bit of jeopardy there, to be that honest. But I think undoubtedly that's something that a lot of our employees are going to be feeling. I just again, I am definitely not a stats person, and I've had to print them because I don't remember them either, because as I just said, my memory is really suffering in lockdown, so excuse me referring to my piece of paper, but some research that LinkedIn have done in partnership with the Mental Health Foundation, they surveyed 2,000 adults, and 56% of those adults said their mental health had deteriorated since lockdown began on the 23rd of March. I mean, that's just incredible. I think that's such a high figure, and I would also question whether that is a true reflection actually of the situation, because I think, as we've just said, some people may not know that it's had an impact, and some people may still not want to admit that it's had an impact, because unfortunately we do still have stigma around mental health, and people are still afraid to be honest about how they're feeling. So I think the well-being of your people is undoubtedly one of those foundations that these 4 pillars sit on. The next one is purpose. So it's about the individual's purpose. Kelly's spoken there about what people's priorities are, and how they may have changed during lockdown. And again, to pick up on Leanne's point about trust, I think a lot of people have had an opportunity to really reevaluate life during lockdown and think about what's important to them. And undoubtedly, I think part of that reflection and time will have been about how people feel about their employer. One thing I think is really interesting about the working from home argument is, and I know we've got some HR people on here, so I'm hoping for those faces that I can see, I'll see some knowing smiles. We've for years heard the argument of, can we trust people to work from home? Can they be trusted to work from home? Will they really do what it is we need them to do? Or will they go and put the washing on, God forbid, or maybe walk the dog at 10 o'clock? I mean, you know, this is bad stuff, I know. And I think what the lockdown scenario has done is actually flipped that trust argument on its head. Because I think now the bigger problem that we might be facing, or the bigger challenge for employers, is, do employees trust their employer? How do they, are they confident, and how confident are they that their employer is going to deal with the return to work, the living with COVID scenario in the right way, and in a way that fits with their purpose and their why? And I think it's sort of opened those. This is a very common statement we hear in regards to working from home. It's opened those floodgates. God forbid, it's opened those floodgates for people to really think about actually how work fits in with their life, and how they want it to fit with their life going forward. And we've heard in the comments some, you know, incredible commuting times, but some people are happy with that because they love what they do. Wouldn't it be incredible if you could love what you do and have some flexibility and freedom and a little bit of time given back to you from your employer? And I think that's where this trust piece has really had a bit of a flip around, because the emphasis was always very much on, does the employer trust the employee? And I think there is very much going to be some questioning now from employees about, do we trust our employers, and what are employers doing to support us? Finally, because I'm just conscious of time, I don't want to take up too much time, the third foundation of the 4 pillars is communication. Kelly's talked a little bit about this, so I won't sort of labour the point too much. But communication, if you've ever attended anything that the Chrysalis Crew have done before, we always talk about communication. And communication for us always boils down to a conversation, having a conversation with your people and understanding what it is that makes your people tick and what motivates them. So much of what we've talked about today is totally personal to the individual. It will probably not come out in an employee survey. It probably won't come out in the very first conversation for most people. Communication through this period has got to be, should have been, but certainly will have to be going forward, consistent, personal, individual focused. And I think it's so important now more than ever that your employees feel that they are being listened to, and what's being, you know, what's being said has been heard. So to give you an example of that, to use the flexible working just once again, because it's such an obvious topic at the moment. When people have asked to work from home previously and been told no, I think really a lot of people have accepted that, rightly or wrongly, and moved on from the issue. Now, when I say to my employer, I want to work from home, I want the flexibility, I need the flexibility because this is what's important to me and this is how work fits into that, I don't think employees will be dismissed in the way that they have been previously on that subject. I don't think people will just be happy to hear a no, it doesn't work. One, because we've seen it does work, and two, because people have had that time to think about their purpose and their why and what really is important to them. Now, I think that's fabulous, because I think that's absolutely how we should be approaching it. And I don't work in an internal HR team anymore, so I don't have to have those conversations. So I think it's great for that reason, but I think it's great because that's how it should be. Employees should be able to make work for them. They should be able to fit it in with everything else. And most importantly, they should be afforded the respect to have a meaningful conversation about their priorities, their world, their, you know, why this is important to them and why it should fit in. And I think what this time has done, or should do, will really drive that the importance of that conversation with people, and allowing people to verbalize all those things, and to have a meaningful response from their employer, which presents both a challenge but also an opportunity. I think that was everything I was going to cover, and as I say, I'm just conscious of time. Kelly, was there anything you wanted to add to those three?
I'm unmuted. No, I suppose just to kind of expand quickly on what you were just saying there, Sam, I think, again, the conversation that I was having with Laura yesterday, I think what will happen as a result of this, we are going to see much more of a people-led kind of recruitment market. The talent market, the recruitment market is going to become much more people-led. Because again, I think we are starting to look at which companies have been looking after their people during this. And when I say people, I mean all people, like suppliers, customers, and their people. I have made some different buying choices over the last few weeks. Lots of other people have done. I will continue to do exactly the same. So I think what we are going to see is, as Sam said, where people want more of that choice and want more of that flex, that I think they're going to be able to drive that much more. Now, some people will need to stay where they are because of the job or the money, they may not necessarily want to jump. But those people that can have a choice, I think will be driving much more of that choice going forwards. And again, the organisations that have not been looking after their people, that do not want to give flex, that do not want to be open to having those conversations or listening or looking at changes, as their people start to leave, they may find that people then go to work for them because they need a job. But actually, are those people going to be adding the same value? Are they going to be as passionate and as driven as they would be working for an organisation that is giving them back what they want? And I do think we're going to see a huge shift in effect, like individuals interviewing the companies that they want to work for. Actually, how did you respond to COVID? How do you look after your people? Do you offer flex working? What's your pay and reward look like? I think we're going to see a huge shift in that. It's no longer and it hasn't been for a while, but I think the shift in terms of employers looking to recruit people and people wanting to work for companies is going to be much more focused on the person. And I think the companies that start to focus on that now will be the ones that thrive over the kind of coming weeks and months.
And I think you said something earlier, Kelly, which really resonated with me, because I definitely have felt this myself, is people have really embraced the joy of simplicity. So I think whilst this absolutely won't be true for everybody, and some people have been really put in difficult positions because of this situation financially and for lots of other reasons, there are lots of people who've actually embraced the simplicity of life, this, you know, the slower pace, the having more time, the perhaps not spending so much money, and we understand the reasons for that. But I think that will drive people to think, am I now a slave to X salary that I've always felt like I was? Could I earn more money and potentially drop less stress? Could I potentially think of a different employer who maybe does pay less, but actually I can see they're doing so much around the, you know, the stuff that satisfies my purpose and my why. Yeah. And I think that joy of simplicity has really been a bit of an epiphany for lots of people, and I definitely have felt it myself. And I'm a spender, as you know. I like spending, I like being out, you know, that money is in my purse and it's back out again if I existed in a world of cash. But I think even for me, you know, I've just thought, do you know what, it doesn't have to be quite as hectic, quite as full, quite as you know, money driven and all those things. And I think that will undoubtedly impact what we see in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And Suzanne's made a really interesting point here in terms of her organisation having conversations about being able to go to a broader pool for recruitment, as working from home will now be standard if they want it. And again, that's absolutely true. You know, if we've only been able to focus on our immediate town, or we've been able to look at kind of easy commuter access, again, you know, a lot of people commute to London daily. But actually, if you can start to look right the way across the UK or beyond, you know, who could you be recruiting into your organisation? You know, some amazing people out there that aren't in big cities with great commuter access, but actually, you know, I think you could get some amazing people. Company car benefit, Em's commented. Company car benefit will be reframed to what's important to my why. Yes, like, who's going to need a company car if everybody's at home? That would definitely be one to think about.
One thing I would love to see, and I think Deborah's just run off, but I think Deborah would agree with me if she was still at her camera, is one thing I would love to see coming out of lockdown is the removal of pensions in the list of benefits. Please, can we think slightly broader than putting pensions in your list of benefits? Deborah, I was just saying, I think this one will appeal to you. If I see one thing coming out of lockdown is that we take pensions away as a benefit. And hopefully now we've got far more sort of creative and appealing ideas to add into that list of things that we deem to be a benefit.
Absolutely. Has anybody got any other questions or comments that they want to ask or share? Sophie.
Hello, is it okay to be?
It absolutely is. Go for it.
This has been absolutely amazing. So thank you very much for putting this on, and to see so many amazing HR people. So I'm not an in-house HR person. I'm a learning and development consultant, and I mainly work with organisations to help them to develop and retain their female talent. So I'm particularly interested from a female-only perspective, if that's okay. Obviously, I appreciate there's other D&I, but you know, issues and challenges, but certainly from the traditional approach that women do most of the caregiving and so on. And I do think that women are going to be significantly impacted by this. I suppose I'm looking at it from a okay, we might be going back to work, but what's going to happen with the children? You know, what are caring responsibilities that we traditionally do, perhaps if you're a single parent? And I'd just be really interested into anybody's thoughts or views as to, do you think women are going to be significantly more impacted as a result of this?
I think for me, it's kind of two-way. I mean, a lot of the people that I work with actually, and even, you know, family members and friends and all those sorts of things. And it was the same for me, child in the 80s. Like my dad was the housewife. As my dad actually won a Housewife of the Year competition in 1987. My mum always worked. My mum was the main breadwinner. My dad stayed at home to look after the three of us. And actually, you know, over the last few years, 3 of my coaching clients have gone back to work and their husbands have stayed at home as the main carers. My sister-in-law is at work full time, and my brother, is staying at home and doing much more of that responsibility. So I think we are starting to see a shift. Do I think it's enough? No.
Yeah.
And even with some of the people that I have been speaking to at home, like, it seems to be a lot of where there have been kids in the house, it seems to have been, from all of the people that I've been speaking to from lots of different organisations, that it is, in a lot of instances, mum that is doing the homework, getting the breakfast ready, making sure the washing is done, doing everything they need to do, taking the kids out for a walk in the afternoon, whilst kind of dad is in another room doing his work. Yeah. And mum is then kind of juggling and kind of, you know, doing whatever. But I don't think that's happening in every case. What I did see, I don't know where I saw it. It may have been on LinkedIn. Maybe
The Guardian did a really interesting piece at the weekend, which I posted about.
Well, there was something that I saw that actually was around kind of giving people work. So actually, if I've got a project that I want doing during this time, who am I more likely to give it to? And as an employer, am I creating an unconscious bias because I'm conscious that, you know, Sam might be at home with kids and actually Sophie might not be. So actually, am I more likely to give the work to Sophie because I know she hasn't got kids at home at the moment, rather than I am to somebody else? So there was a lot around the kind of unconscious bias that we may be creating based on what we know about people. But certainly across the board, am I seeing more women that are doing much more of the responsibility? I would, from my experience, only in a small amount of cases. I think some people are kind of, we've got lots of comments coming through on this one, as I'm sure you can imagine. But yeah, Helen's saying I think women are at an advantage in terms of carer policies. Some where, yes, women are currently being impacted. So many say they're still taking on the bulk of the care whilst working. Tracy said she's sat listening to us with a 2 and a 5-year-old in the background. Many have said to me, my husband's job is more important.
Yeah.
And
Show me those people, Leanne. Who said that?
I've seen it as well. And I have to say, I've got a superstar husband who's just bought me a fantastic cup of coffee, so I can't complain.
That's good.
Yeah. He's on a day off, but he's back to work tomorrow and over the weekend. So, but anyway, because he does shift work from home. But yeah, it's interesting. Like you say, there's some fantastic, interesting comments around it.
Yeah, there are actually, Sophie, if you connect with, if you're not already, if you connect with a woman called Cheney Hamilton.
Okay, how do you spell that?
Cheney Hamilton.
Yeah.
And there's a guy called Han Son Lee. So that's Han, H-A-N.
Yeah.
Dash Son, S-O-N, Lee.
Yeah.
They joined us for one of the conversations a few months ago, actually, to kind of talk about flex working. Han Son is the founder of an organisation called Daddy Life, and he does a lot around kind of dads wanting flex working and what that looks like.
Okay, brilliant.
He did a bit of a kind of UK tour last year, talking to the likes of kind of Channel 4, Sky and some of those organisations to talk about that. And Cheney's actually, she's founder of kind of 3 different job boards and companies: Find Your Flex, Mummy Jobs, and might be Daddy Jobs UK. But some of the research and statistics that they've got around flex working, around caring responsibility. But again, even like people that want flex working or different responsibilities that don't have children, actually they just want greater flex in their life. Not because they've got caring responsibility, not because they've got parental responsibility. They just want greater flex. And what they have been finding is that for a lot of their, the people that they've been kind of speaking to as part of this survey, employers are less likely to give flex unless you've got a reason, such as caring or children, and not taking into account that some people just want more work-life balance. So I think if, you know, that it may be worth just kind of speaking to them, because they've got some amazing statistics about kind of men, women, they've got different age groups, they've got loads of kind of different D&I stuff, so they've got it all.
No, that's really helpful. It's interesting because I want to do a little bit of research myself into how the difference between, say, a father who's got parental responsibility as a leader, and also a mother who's got parental responsibility as caring responsibilities as a leader, and see if their confidence has been impacted at the moment. So if anybody's interested, then please reach out. But thank you very much. That's really helpful, and thanks everybody for their comments.
Pleasure. And I mean, Tracy's made a brilliant point here, and this is kind of one of my taglines, Tracy, so thank you. But agile working should not need a reason, kids or not. We don't need to know why someone wants it. It should be because we're measured on outputs, not being present in the office.
Absolutely, totally agree.
Anybody that has seen me talk about anything, it's all outputs. Like, I am so sick and tired. I mean, I think it was Cheney, actually, when we did the flex work, Cheney had mentioned that, like, there are companies that still have cameras on people's desks in the office to monitor how long they're sat at their desk for, and then they look at their productivity levels. Like, for me, it's outputs. At the Chrysalis, we work a 4-day week. Every single one of us is responsible for our outputs, but I don't care how long your bum is sat in a seat for during the day. I just want the work doing. I want the outputs doing. The rest of it's absolutely up to you. So we need much more in that as well. So thank you for that reminder, Tracy. Any other kind of quick comments or questions before we let all you lovely people carry on with your day? Suzanne says, another HR Facebook group. There's been a number of questions about how to monitor workload via systems. Do you know what that group may be, Suzanne? Feel free to kind of comment on there as well. But any other questions for Sam or I, or any other points or anything that anybody would like to ask us before we let all of you fabulous people get on with the rest of your day? Lots of head shaking.
HR Ninjas, variety of views back, including don't do it. Good, I'm glad to hear somebody said don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Thank you. So we're just getting lots of thanks, which is lovely from all of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So as I said, we will make sure that you get the recordings in your inboxes. If you do think of any questions, either as you are, I don't know, rewatching, if you want to sit and rewatch it, or as you're kind of going through your notes or anything like that, feel free to just drop Sam or I a note, or reach out to us on social media, get in touch with us on LinkedIn. You know, we are absolutely, you know, we want to make sure that we're adding as much value as possible. And if there's anything that we can do to make sure that kind of all of us are looking at a much more people first, people focused approach as we start to kind of look at what the next phases of all of this are going to look like, then we'd love to have conversations with you. And we just want to make sure it's all about the people, you know, kind of people being put first. So you know, anything that we can help with, just give us a shout, and we'll absolutely do our best to help you. So thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Lovely to see so many new faces and so many familiar ones as well. So thank you very much for giving us an hour of your time, and we'll see you again soon.